Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Short Hops with Wichita Wingnuts manager Kevin Hooper. Short Hops is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Wichita manager questions about the Wingnuts, baseball or sports in general, or just seek the skipper's wisdom about life events that may be going on. In this week's episode, we have an exciting program for you as Kevin shares about the acquisition of Brett Wallach. He shares with us his NFL insights, and he talks with us a little bit about what his wife is better at in terms of sports. So let's get right to Short Hops. Okay, so let us welcome back manager Kevin Hooper this week. Kevin, let's first of all start with team updates you have for us.
Well, we got a couple updates that we can talk about. Brett Wallach we acquired via trade, starting pitcher from Grand Prairie. We're very excited to add him to what we already think is a pretty stout rotation. So to add a guy like him, a former third rounder, his father was a longtime big leaguer, Tim. Wonderful, wonderful kid. We've heard nothing but great things about him. And like I said, we faced him a couple times last year and really liked what we saw out of him. So very excited to add him. That's really the only move. We're obviously working on quite a few things with the team, as we always are at this time of year, working on a couple free agent guys that we've been speaking to. So we'll just kind of see what shakes with that. And we actually, I'll tell you now, we re-signed Harrison Kane.
Okay.
That's another addition. We'll have him back, a very exciting player who, depending on what happens in our outfield, could very easily end up being our center fielder. If not, he'll be back in the right. Just one of the, hands down, arguably the best defender in the league, I would say, in the outfield, just with his arm and his speed. So my type of guy, definitely, that was a big one for us to get back because, you know, I like to build this thing through the middle, and he'll be another key part for us. So those are the two so far this week, and hopefully next week and the weeks to come here soon we'll have some other additions that we'll be able to announce.
Was Van Stratton just kind of just a month thing because the Mexican League was over with then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was. So he'll end up going back to Mexico. There's still hope, and we're still working hard at trying to get him an invite to a affiliated spring training because I really believe that guy could be a AAA center fielder right now, if not a fourth outfielder in the major leagues eventually. I think that highly of him and his abilities. So we'll see what happens with that, but if he doesn't get signed, he'll be back in Mexico, and maybe just depending on how his team does, maybe we could get him at the end of the year once again next year.
He's quite an outfielder, no doubt about that.
Yeah, very, very good.
I thought you might want to spend a little time telling us about David Espinosa's news.
Yes. Espy, as we all know, a former teammate of mine in AAA in Toledo when we were at Detroit, and then obviously I got to manage him the last couple of years. He's taken a job with the Miami Marlins. He's in spring training, going to be kind of a roving coach, I believe, and then once they break from spring training, he'll take over the Indy level, where he'll scout the Indy levels. And I mean, what a guy to do that. He's been in Indy ball now for quite some time and has played in the Atlantic League and the American Association, the two top leagues in Indy ball. So be a great spot for him. I'm excited for him, and I know he's excited for the opportunity they're giving him.
One other thing that before we got into our fan questions this week, I wanted to mention, a few people had written in and asked about how this Texas team worked in the American Association. So I thought I'd let you explain how this worked out here.
Yes, they hired Jane Frisbee as their manager. Frizz was a pitching coach for Sioux City for a while and for Fort Worth back when Fort Worth was in our league. So I know Frizz pretty well, and he's managed in the last 3 years, I believe, in the Frontier League. But they named him manager last week, and they're going to combine Amarillo and Grand Prairie. Amarillo's team's pretty much depleted. They've either traded those guys or released all of them. So that team's pretty much depleted, and then Frizz will take over that Grand Prairie squad. But the same owner owns both teams. So they're going to play 25 games in Grand Prairie and 25 in Amarillo to keep both stadiums going, and then they'll play the 50 like everybody else on the road.
Okay, excellent. So let us head to our fan questions this week. First of all, Steve from Manitoba would like to say happy birthday to you. So happy birthday, Kevin Hooper.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve.
What would be your ideal method of voting on Hall of Famers? Current system with the writers, living Hall of Famers, combination of those groups, or do you have something else in mind?
This is a tough one because I know it's kind of turned into a mess, and you hear a lot about the way that it's gone about. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they change something not too long ago to where you don't have the lifelong membership of voting now?
That's correct.
Some of the riders, I believe. So I think that was a good move going forward, at least a start to something where they've caught a lot of heck about it. But that's a tough subject. It really is. It's tough to determine who's going to vote and who's not, and all that stuff with a Hall of Fame type deal. It's kind of a no-win situation because everybody's going to have their opinion like they do on everything. And I do like the members of the Hall of Fame that are alive being able to vote. Obviously, they know what it takes to get there. And I do like the current writers, guys who are covering the game of baseball now in this day and age, to be able to vote, and maybe a combination of that. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue to make changes to it and what comes of that, because I know that's a tough subject for a lot of people to take, the way that they're voting on it. And, it's just a tough topic, with what's going to be right, what's going to be the right way to vote and get people to agree on it.
It is a very tough call because I would think that, some former players, like I think you and I have discussed about the how some of those players look upon the guys who are involved in steroids and don't believe that they deserve to get in. And maybe they don't. Okay, I don't have any qualms with what they're saying.
Right.
But these guys play in a different era and understand things from a different perspective, and maybe some fans would think that they're biased by their perspective of the game, but that could be true with writers too, I guess.
Exactly. And I also, when you talk about the steroids, I think there's a lot of writers that may not vote guys in during that steroid era, whether you have been claimed to have used them or not. I think that some of those writers weren't voting for any players during that steroid era, which, makes it tough, and I don't think that that's right.
I agree. A guy like Craig Biggio, who always played the game right, deserved to be treated like a...
like a Maddox or somebody like that, if you weren't voting on guys like that at the time.
Absolutely. Vic,
very good question, though, Steve.
Absolutely. Vic from Wichita would like to know, are there parts of this year's schedule that you really did not like or that you found to be tougher than others?
Well, I think the toughest part, as you know, of our schedule is the long road trip we have to take for the NBC tournament. It's a grind. And I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3... 17 days that trip is, if you count the All-Star game. We go to Laredo for 3 during that NBC, and then there's a 3-day break for the All-Star game. Obviously, hopefully a lot of our guys won't have a break, but they'll be flying from Laredo to St. Paul, and then they would meet us in Lincoln. That's where we start after that All-Star break, is in Lincoln. And then we go Lincoln, Fargo, and Winnipeg, finish that trip in Winnipeg, then have about a 15-hour trip back home with the day off. So that's always a grind, and that's always a tough time of year. I try to keep things as light and loose as I can during that trip. We really have a good time. You have to, because it gets redundant. It gets to be long. But, I also try to tell them at the beginning of the year it's coming, and start preparing yourself for it, because there's nothing we can do about it. It's part of our schedule. Another part of our schedule, I would think, it's just the trips to Laredo when we're at home, and then we have to travel to Laredo, which is a 12, 13-hour trip. It makes it really tough when we have to do that, when we have to travel like that. When we play a night game at home, then you hop on a bus and travel 12, 13 hours through the night and have to play that next day. And I think we have a couple of those this year where we have to go to Laredo and do that. And Gary's another one that's an 11-hour trip that we have to hop on a bus after a home night game and then head 11 hours to Gary. So those are always tough with the travel. Those are days, obviously, we'll get to a hotel and, get a couple hours of rest and head right over the field. Because me as a manager, I like, after those long road trips, I think a lot of managers would maybe not take batting practice that first day. We're on the opposite. I want to get out on the field and get our legs moving a little bit, take a nice short BP, and then maybe the next day that second night there on that road trip where we won't take BP and catch up on some rest.
Well, that's an interesting strategy. I hadn't seen that, so good for you.
Yeah.
When you get the Laredo trip, does that mean that you will get the other, either Amarillo or Grand Prairie at the same time?
It just depends. Like I know there's one series where we go to Laredo for 3 and come right back.
Oh, wow.
Which is tough. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you're just going for 3 games. It's a lot easier when it gets broken up. Like I said, and then another one is the 3-day trip right before the All-Star break. So really, you're going for 3, and then you're coming right back home as well. And I think we go there 3 times. Yeah, we finished the year there. And sure enough, we go there for 4 and come back. So none of the 3 Laredo trips are we going somewhere else, which is kind of crazy to me for sure. So, but it's tough. It's tough to make a schedule. You're never going to be 100% happy with it. So I think that those are the tough parts of our schedule. I would think are those travel days. I think we play Laredo 17 times, Joplin 16 times, and the Texas team 14 times. So a lot of divisional games, which I always like. I think 47 of our 100 are in the division, which is great, which is what I want.
That's excellent. Shirley from Wichita would like to know, I have always wondered this, but have never heard from players really how they felt about this, so I wonder from your perspective. As a player, how did you feel about the 1994 World Series being canceled by the strike?
Another good question, Shirley. It's another tough one. When I was still in high school during that time. I was a 95 grad out of high school, and it is what it is kind of my answer to that, I think, because the baseball union, and I'm sure you've heard quite a few people talk about this, is one of the strongest unions known to man. And you hear about it a lot, how strong the union is. And when something like that happens, as unfortunate as it is, obviously you have a World Series canceled, which is a big deal. But it's the players making a stand and going on strike, and that's another sensitive subject, because you hear all the stories about those that crossed the line, that crossed over to play and, kind of got blackballed from the game of baseball for doing so. So it's kind of fun to hear some of those stories of both sides, the guys that talked about going on strike, and then the guys, because I've come across players that were guys who crossed and just got a little bit of time because of it. So weird situation, no doubt about it, but it kind of is what it is. When a big thing happens like that and you got a union involved like that, it was so strong, it didn't surprise me that it got to that point where that was canceled. Sylvester
from Wichita would like to know, why do you think there are not a lot of great left-handed closers?
That's a great question, and that's the first time I've ever really been asked that. It makes a lot of sense because there aren't a ton of them. I was fortunate enough to have a really good one in Justin Dowdy, who was a proven guy and a left-handed closer who threw really hard. I think, honestly, because I think you do the math, I think that there's more right-handed hitters in the game, and I believe that that's been the case for quite some time, and that's why you have a lot of the righties finishing games. And you look at numbers as well, you're not going to find near as many lefties that have the velocity that righties have. So that's probably your answer right there. You're not going to find as many lefties who are as dominant as those righties with the velocity on top, which guys like to have at the end of a ball game.
I'm kind of curious because you've been a player, been a manager now. There seems, I know that growing up, there always seemed to be this idea that left-handers were somehow or another screwballs or goofier in some way or another.
Right,
I think of like Bill Lee.
Right.
Do you think that has any part that plays in this? Like they don't think they have the temperament for it, which is kind of crazy, but is that playing into it, do you think?
Well, I think that you're right, because when I look at it as a manager, my lefties are typically going to be lefty specialists. I'm going to have one or two guys down there who can get lefties out. Now, a guy like Dowdy, if I come across him and he's left-handed to close games out, I don't mind that one bit. I want the best guy to finish a game that I have down there, and whether he's right-handed or left-handed, it really doesn't matter to me one bit. So I'm going to try to get 3 outs as quick as I can, whether he's right-handed or left-handed. And Dowdy was just that guy for us for a couple of years, and he ended up being left-handed. Besides that, though, I haven't had a lefty, in the that's been able to do that.
Kyle from Anoka would like to know, the winter meetings is always one of my favorite times in the baseball season. Have you ever been a part of a big trade?
Also one of my favorite times of the year, Kyle, because you see so many trades and a lot of stuff that's happening in the game, which is exciting for everyone. I was never part of a trade at all in my 10 years. Was never part of a trade, so never part of a big deal. It was always fun, though, as a player, kind of wondering, especially when you're in the minor leagues and had some good seasons there, wondering if you might be part of a deal, because that's always in the back of your mind as a player with trade deadlines that come up and then the off-season trades. But was never even in a trade deal, so that's a tough one for me to answer, but I agree that this is one of the most exciting times in the game of baseball, the winter meetings.
Chip from Derby would like to know from you, Zach Greinke chose to sign with Arizona over the Dodgers or the Cubs. Over or under, how many games into the season before he is regretting that decision? That's a tough one.
I'm gonna say none. I don't think he's gonna regret it one bit. He got a lot of money. That's for sure. And I think I would believe in my heart that Greinke thinks that they have a chance to win in Arizona, because I don't think you sign a deal like that if you think otherwise. It's funny that this is brought up because Steve Schuster, our old broadcaster who's now in Winnipeg, obviously everybody knows the David Peralta story, who's in the major leagues as an outfielder with Arizona who played for us. Steve sent me a pretty cool article today on Arizona and how they bring guys up, and how Chip Hale really puts an emphasis on winning throughout the minor league system. And he thinks that has really helped when those guys get to the big leagues. And I've said it all along, too. If I was in affiliated ball, that's how if I ran a system, that's how I would want it as well, where you got to emphasize winning. Because, honestly, when I got drafted, the first thing they say is, I go in there and they tell me winning's not that important. We're here to develop you. And I kind of looked around like, wait a minute. Here I am coming from Wichita State University, where that's all we did was win, and that's all we wanted to do was win. And you're sitting here telling me it's not that important. I didn't agree with that a whole lot. I think that it's got to be an emphasis all the way through the minor league system. I think Greinke's going to be a huge addition to Arizona, and I think that he chose them for a reason, whatever that reason might be. A lot of us may not even know. So I don't think that he's going to be regretting that decision one bit.
I was going to say an organization.
Now, maybe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just maybe you say if they're 50 games under 500, we might discuss it again later. But I think that he honestly signed there because he thinks that they have a good chance to win some games, and he's going to do nothing but help that cause.
I was going to say an organization that has Tony La Russa at the top, you can't think it's going to be bad for very long. So
no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Our next question comes from Donnie from Hayesville, who'd like to know, great moves by the Royals to sign Soria and to keep Young, primed for a World Series run again, wouldn't you say?
I hope so. Like I continue to say, it's great for the Midwest. It's great for baseball, the run that they've been on the last couple of years, getting to the World Series. Soria is a neat one because that's where he started his career, was in Kansas City, and was one of the dominant closers back with them when he was with the Royals. And for him to be a setup guy for Wade is going to be pretty special, having those two guys at the end of the game. And I'm a big Chris Young fan. He's a guy that you pull for, a guy that's worked hard to get where he's at, overcome some obstacles, and very happy that they signed him back and excited to watch and see what he can do for him again next year.
I'm interested to see how that relates to Holland now. The Soria basically.
Yeah, because we spoke about him, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think it's probably going to be, Holland's probably not going to be ready for quite some time. I would think that it might be quite a while from him having surgery here. I don't even remember exactly when he had the surgery, but you're maybe looking at a year from when he did have the surgery of him being 100% on board. So, but like we talked about earlier, he's going to do nothing but help that club whenever he does come back, if he is able to come back next year at all.
Ken from Wichita would like to know, do you think there is a better brand of baseball glove than others? He would also like to know and ask if there's a better wood choice to use in bats.
Ken, I'm going to be a little biased here. I was a Mizuno guy. That's who my endorsement deal was with when I played, was Mizuno. I actually used a Mizuno glove from my sophomore year in college on. I actually used the same model once I got to pro ball that I used in college. So I'm a little biased with that because of my connection with Mizuno and for how long I've used them. But since I've gotten into softball with the academies that my girls play, I've had a Louisville Slugger softball glove that I absolutely love. I know Wilson makes a very good glove, and Rawlings, which is the name that's the glove that's named after the Gold Glove, is another quality brand. So I don't think you can really go wrong. You just want the leather to be good. Make sure you take care of it. And I'm guessing that this is a question maybe for Ken's child. So just something that he's comfortable in, or she is comfortable in, and that fits their hand the best and that they feel most comfortable with. That's my suggestion on that. And as far as better wood choice, that's a tough one, because I was an Old Hickory guy. We used Old Hickory here with the Wingnuts the first couple of years I managed here. Then we moved to Victus, which is another good brand, and then we've moved to Zinger for the last couple of years. So, and I used Louisville Slugger when I first came up in the minor leagues. So same situation there. I think it's something that you find that you're most comfortable with, that feels the best, that you maybe feel like has the most pop off of it, and just trial and error type deal with the glove and the bat. I don't think that there's one choice that is better than others. I think you see those guys in the major leagues, they don't all use the same brand. So they use what's most comfortable for them and what feels the best. Because that's how it was for me, especially with a bat. I just have to pick it up and feel the weight and the balance, and then you come up with a favorite model that you liked and you ran with it. It's pretty much my story.
So it's one of those kind of things that when you went to the sporting goods store or something and tried some things out, you just had a right feel for it.
Yeah, and for me, it was never really going to a sporting goods store. It was just in spring training, bats being around. Or me switching to Old Hickory was my first year in AAA, and a veteran guy, Brian Banks, it was actually his model of Old Hickory. And it's kind of trial and error of trying some of your teammates' bats out. You might pick one up and like what they have and start swinging that. So a lot of it's just trial and error and getting something in your hands that feels really good and running with it.
That's excellent. Mitch from El Dorado would like to know from you, what are some drills a person can do to practice for baseball when you don't have anyone else to practice with, drills to do when you are alone?
When I was growing up, I spent hours and hours. We had a brick wall in the front of our house, and hours and hours I just played wall ball by myself with a tennis ball in my glove. And I mean hours and hours I spent out there in our front lawn. And I did it by myself, just throwing the ball against the wall and having it bounce back and working on your hand-eye coordination. And then another one would be grabbing an old mattress and putting it in your basement or somewhere in your garage and grabbing a tee and just hitting some balls into that mattress, or obviously into a net if you have one of those. So, I know people say it's tough. I don't have anybody to work out with or play catch with or stuff, but a desire, you'll find things that you can do by yourself, and that's what I did. Growing up, I had to do a lot of stuff by myself and played a lot of wall ball and then just hit off the tee a lot on my own. I think those are the two best things, offensively and defensively, that you can do by yourself. And you know what? If you don't have a tee or a mattress, just take dry swings. Just taking dry swings in your basement by yourself or in your garage, wherever you have some room, just working on that swing path. That's
excellent advice there. Awesome. Joining to the NFL this week, we have Kevin's favorite person returning in Chiefs fan who asked, Kevin, 6 in a row.
Yes, sir.
Alex Smith has a bunch of stats better than Cam Newton. I know they are 7-5, but doesn't Smith deserve some MVP consideration?
If you ask me, I'd say yes. If you ask the general public, they're going to say no chance, just because it's Alex Smith. He's not the glamorous quarterback that everybody loves, but no, he's done a tremendous job. And here we are talking once again this week, Chiefs fan, of our boys being 7-5 after being 1-5. Here we go talking from which pick are we going to get in the draft? We're 1-5. Let's tank the rest of the season, to now being right in the middle of a playoff hunt. So pretty impressive. I'm a big Alex Smith fan. I know I've said many times I'm a big Andy Reid fan. Always have been since they got him. fun to watch. I'm excited to watch him again this next week, and yeah, I think Alex Smith should be considered. You know, he's definitely the most valuable player on the Chiefs. He's such a good quarterback at managing a game. He just manages the game. He doesn't try to do too much ever. He'll take the short dump pass if he needs to. He's been able to go deep to Macklin a couple times the last couple of weeks. And he's just a very, very good game manager at the quarterback position.
The interesting thing when this question was posed, that I went out to go research a little bit, is that he has the first or second highest yards per attempt and yards per completion average in the NFL. Who'd have thought that?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for him.
Because, you know, and they always talked about how that's all he did was dump off and throw these short passes. And, you know, I always said, well, what does it matter? What does it matter? As long as you're winning games, it's just like me talking about a guy who throws 85 or 95. I don't care. As long as he gets guys out, that's the name of the game, right? And Alex has found a pretty good way of helping those guys win ball games here and winning 6 in a row, and hopefully they can continue rattling them off.
Tommy from Hutchinson asked you, the Browns are going to start Johnny Manziel again. Hasn't this guy done enough to show that he doesn't deserve another chance?
Yeah, here we go talking about some of these bad rap guys in the game of football. And it's been tough. You know, here's a guy who had to get some help with the issues that he's had, and then they had a bye week, and they wanted him to stay around town. I guess he went to Texas and did some partying, and then not only that, he let somebody video him, you know, and then he's taking pictures with people. And, you know, there comes a time, and I mentioned it before, you got to grow up. You got to grow up. But then again, it's like me. I talk about my guys. They're grown men. I'm not here to babysit my guys. They're grown men, and they're going to have a good time. They're going to party. I mean, he's in the limelight, but there also comes a certain responsibility in my mind when that's the case too. And you know, a lot of people are saying he didn't do a whole lot wrong. He was just out partying, like maybe other people do. But the difference is other people aren't letting others videotape him while he's doing it. You know, he's already in the spotlight, and for the bad that he's done, and for him to put himself in that situation is pretty tough. But here he goes. He's going to get another opportunity. It's a shame because he's a fun guy to watch play the game of football. He brings a lot to the table with his legs, and he gets very creative out there at the quarterback position. So wish him the best. Hopefully, you know, he's going to turn it around and, you know, get himself on the right track and learn from his mistakes.
You know, you're a guy that, since I've come to know you, that a lot of what you've talked to me about has been, you're not only looking for a guy who's the right fit for your team, but you are a person who will say you understand that people make mistakes and you want to give them a chance as long as they're willing to take that chance, you know, to do things in the right way. So I'm kind of curious from your look at this, how is it that you determine whether somebody has done enough or is moving in the right direction that you do take a chance on?
Yeah, and like you said, that's got to be the proof in the pudding there, though, is you've got to show me that you're making improvements and that you're trying to make improvements and that you're trying to make yourself better and learning from your mistakes. Because if you continue to do the same thing over and over and over, the definition of that is ignorance, you know? And, I mean, like I said, I hope that he learns from it and this was maybe the final straw and realizes that he's got an opportunity here to do something special that a lot of people would love to do, and he needs to take advantage of that opportunity and do it the right way. You know, like you said, I've never been shy of taking guys who've made mistakes in the past, and because I'm a firm believer, you put them in the right situation, they're going to flourish. And we've had some pretty good examples of that. And you know, you put them in that right atmosphere and right environment where they're going to come here and I'm going to hold them accountable. That's a good thing a lot of times, and that's a great situation for a lot of guys. I've had a lot of guys who have been very thankful of me giving them that second chance and that opportunity.
We have a couple.
And you know what, Robert? There's going to be sometimes where I might give a guy a chance and thinking he deserves it, and it backfires. And I'm man enough to say that. You know, I'm not always going to be right either in picking my guys, and you give them the opportunity, and once again, you hope for the best and that they're going to flourish with that opportunity and take advantage of it. But that's not always the case.
I would take it, though, that when you look at that, you say to yourself, you would rather err on the side of giving a guy a chance than being cynical.
Right, absolutely.
That's why we love Kevin Hooper. We have a couple of questions from Benny from Hutchinson. The first one is the Kevin Hooper top 5 power ranking.
Here we go. Well, number one's pretty obvious choice in Carolina Panthers, who are 12-0. I'm going to go, these next couple you could intertwine, however. I'm going to go Arizona, the number 2. I will go Denver and Cincinnati are a toss-up, 3 and 4 for me. So let's go Cincy 3, Denver 4, and then New England, who lost a tough one yesterday, we'll make them 5, with the Kansas City Chiefs a close 6. How about that? Behind them at 7 and 5.
That'll make Chiefs fan.
There you go. Yes.
Benny would also like to know, Kevin, I asked last week about speculation of Chip Kelly leaving Philadelphia. I hear people saying he should be fired. Does a guy who has a record of 25-19 deserve to be fired in less than 3 seasons?
Yeah, you ask me, I'm going to say no, he doesn't deserve to be fired. This is the media, Benny. This is the media portion of Chip Kelly. He's, once again, in the limelight. Everybody loves to talk about him. There's a lot of speculation of him going back to college. A lot of rumors floating around, and that's what the media does. That's the media. That's their job. They got to make the public and the fans excited, and they got to talk about something. And Chip Kelly's one of those hot commodities right now to talk about, it seems. He's done a great job. Here's a college guy who a lot of people said his system's never going to work in the NFL, and he's had quite a bit of success doing it. Of course, there's been some games that haven't been so good for him, but I don't know if that's for him to blame or not. He seems like he's a pretty creative and exciting coach to watch, and some of the schemes that he comes up with in the plays, it's very exciting at times to watch. I loved watching when I was in college at Oregon, just seeing some of the stuff they do and pull off there. But be interesting to see what his future holds, if he is going to go back to the college game or stick around in Philly. But no, I don't think, especially yesterday, that was a huge win for them, beating New England there and keeping them in the ball game, I guess. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. And like I said, I'm anxious to see, because I'm sure the college list of teams is pretty long. It's a pretty long list of guys teams who would want him at the helm of their college program.
Well, you aren't kidding about that. Our next question is Craig from Kansas City, who would like to know, is it troubling to you to see teams like the Philadelphia 76ers, who honestly build the team to lose each year? I mean, this seems like they are cheating the fans, the sport, and the sports fans in general.
Yeah, I'm not a big NBA fan, as I stated before. The Sixers, that long, and what was it, 17, 18, 19,
yeah,
something like that. Yeah. They started somewhere around there. But, yeah, I would hope that the Philadelphia 76ers aren't building a team to lose each year. I would think that they're banking on here soon enough, some of those young core guys being able to improve and make a run at the thing, you would hope. But yeah, if it's year after year after year and not showing a lot of glimpses of improvement, yeah, I do believe they're cheating the fans of sport and sports fans in general. I think, that as we talk about all the time, being held accountable, that goes along with everybody, especially in a major sport, where you've got a lot of people spending some hard-earned money to show up every night in an arena to watch your basketball team play. And, with that comes a lot of responsibilities, I do believe, and showing the fans and those people who do spend their hard-earned money that you're at least trying to make an adjustment and improvement year to year.
Before we get to our last question this week, I just wanted to mention about what a tremendous guy Kevin is here, because this is week 27 of the show, so that means half of a year Kevin's put up with me. So got to be pretty impressed for that. Pretty impressed by that.
It's been fun, Robert. I didn't know. I honestly thought once the season would end that we would probably take a hiatus and join back the beginning of next year. But I'm glad that we've continued to do this even through the off season, and it's been a lot of fun. And once again, I can't thank everybody enough for the questions that they bring in week after week, and just for the listeners out there. It's pretty special, and it means a lot to me that there's that much interest and excitement about it, and that we get this many questions week after week.
Absolutely. So our last question from the week is Amy from Wichita would like to know, she read that Brett Favre got beat by his wife in a triathlon. What sport or sports would your wife beat you in?
Well, we have a neighbor whose name is Amy, and then we have another one right down the street that's named Amy. And I asked my wife, is this one of our neighbors that sent this one in, I'm wondering? She got a kick out of that. I called her over tonight and said, hon, you're gonna enjoy the last question, because she knows our last question is usually a fun one. And I go through the questions a lot of times with her, and she gets a kick out of some of them. And she definitely got a kick out of this one. She gets so mad at me because anything sports related, she talks about how good I am at it. You know, I feel like I've just been blessed with some athletic ability where I pick something up sports related and it comes pretty easy for me, whatever reason. Just one of those things I was blessed with, I guess. But long distance running, no doubt about it, she'd be me. That's the one thing. Anything long distance wise, I have always dreaded running long distance. I was a speed guy. I was a sprint guy. I always worked on my fast twitch muscles in the off season, and anytime I had to run distance, I was just never a big fan of it. She's run 3 half marathons, so she's definitely got me in that. I don't think I could last for a half marathon, so that's the one thing for sure, and I'm sure there's a couple others along the way. She said that she used to be able to beat me in miniature golf, but that's kind of gone downhill throughout the years, she said. But you know, we're very competitive, and we have fun with everything we get to compete each other against. But long distance running, anything long distance wise, she'd definitely beat.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this week, Kevin.
Thanks as always, Robert. We'll see you next week.
All right, see you then.
Take care.
We want to thank Kevin for joining us on Short Hops this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Wichita Wingnuts manager, please send them to us at askkevin@minorleaguesportsupport.com. That's askkevin@minorleaguesportsupport.com. Please have your questions to us by Sunday evening so we can give the skipper a little time to review them before we record the show on Monday. I want to thank you for joining us this week. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Short Hops.